Hey everybody, in this video, I'm actually in Brooks School Park in Fishers, Indiana. So I'm not actually in Indianapolis, Indiana, but Fishers is a suburb just on the northeast side of Indianapolis. So it's practically the same, or very, very close to it. But in this video, we're gonna talk about what the winter is really like in Indianapolis and just right here in central Indiana. So stay tuned. Hey everybody, I'm Jason Compton with the Compton Home Group. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living in Indianapolis, Indiana, or of course where I'm at right now today in Fishers, Indiana, or any of the surrounding cities and towns of Indianapolis, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also tap the little bell so you're notified every time we do a new video. Now we have people reaching out to us from all over the country with questions about Indianapolis and what it's like to live there and where should I be living, what's going to be best for me, and then of course some of the cities and towns surrounding Indianapolis as well. So if you have questions at all about Indianapolis, any of the surrounding areas, then make sure that you reach out to us any way that you know how. We'll always have your back with those questions, and we'll certainly have your back when it comes time for you to make your move to the Indy Metro. All right guys, so again today I'm in actually Fishers, Indiana at Brooks School Park, which is a park just a little bit out of the central area or the central part of Fishers. I'd call it a little further east in Fishers, but a cool little park, and you can see it right here behind me. Popular place. Not so popular today because it's super wet and it's actually pretty chilly today. So we're going to talk about what it's really like in the winter here in the Midwest or in central Indiana or around Indianapolis, because there are people, of course, that have a lot of questions about it. Now, you can always look on weather.com or your weather app, and you could look up what the climate's actually like here and what the weather's probably like in the winter if you live in some other place in the country, and try to get a gauge on what it's really like. Now, if you're from the Midwest, it's not going to be any big surprise to you. So if you're from Indiana anywhere, or Kentucky, or Illinois, or Michigan, or Ohio, or something like that, then it's probably going to be pretty similar to what you've experienced your entire life. But if you're from Florida, or Arizona, or Southern California, and you've really never experienced a winter in your life outside of maybe a ski vacation or something like that, or you're visiting family in a particular part of the country that actually has a winter, or a typical winter that you would define in the dictionary as being winter and not just spending winter in Miami, Florida, which I mean, it might be the actual season of winter, but that certainly isn't all that harsh. So you may be wondering what it's really like. And Indianapolis, as far as the Midwest goes, is probably pretty typical. I'd say the biggest surprise, though, that you get when living in a place like this is that we just don't get as much snow as what you might think. So this really is what the winter, for the most part, looks like. So you can see this creek right here. It's actually a little bit on the high side, and we just had a ton of rain here recently, even though it's actually very late winter at this point in this video. So this video is not being shot in December, it's not being shot in January, it's not being shot in February. It's actually being shot in early March. And so early March is technically still winter. It doesn't turn spring until around the 20th or 21st or so. So this is what a lot of days really truly look like. It's very cloudy today, pavement's wet just because we've gotten some rain, and that's what we're probably going to see most of the winter. We do, however, get about 22 inches of snow a year on average, and we usually get it in pretty spread out pieces. So it might be an inch here, 2 inches there, 3 inches here. Now this year, this video is being shot in March of 2022, so back in February, we did get a very big snow. We got, depending on where you were, but where I live, out just a little bit east of Indianapolis, in Greenfield, Indiana, we got about 11 or 12 inches, something like that. I mean, we got walloped big time. So that usually doesn't happen in the winter. We will normally get maybe a 5-inch snow or a 6-inch snow as kind of our big one for the year, and then everything else is really usually pretty spread out. But even that 11 or so inches of snow, it didn't stick around very long. Now it's definitely cold enough a lot of times for snow to stick around, but if the sun comes out and the temperature's in the 20s, something like that, amazingly, the snow starts to melt. The sun hitting it just gets it to the point where it starts to dissipate pretty fast. And the roads, like this one just out here in front of me, this is Brooks School Road, kind of a major road, but 116th Street is just off to my south up here. Busy roads like that, when the snow hits, are usually pretty clear fast. usually within a day or so. Unless we've got just an unbelievable amount of snow, like 11 inches, it might take a couple of days to get them really super clear, but usually within a day, they are easily passable. Now, the side streets could be a different story. They might be a lot more difficult, or the neighborhood that you live in or you're looking in, it might have snow removal or something like that, where they hire a snowplow to come through and plow the streets. That might be a day or so before they actually get to that, depending on your HOA or just where you live. If you're taken care of by the city you live in, by Indianapolis or by the city of Fishers, something like that, you're going to be a lower priority for them. So the major roads are definitely going to be something that they want to get to a whole lot faster. So you may deal with that just a little bit. And you, of course, have to shovel your own driveway, your sidewalk, all of that stuff, unless it's included in a townhome or a condo association. But you're pretty much on your own there. But we just don't get as much. If you go a little further north in Indiana, up to South Bend, and then of course if you get into Michigan, you get into Wisconsin and the Chicago area and Illinois, they get quite a bit more snow than what we do. And you can get in some places that pretty much have snow on the ground most of the winter. We just aren't like that. This, again, this is kind of what winter looks like. We do get some sunny days here and there, and it does get dry. This winter's actually been really quite dry. It was one of the least snowiest winters on record until we got that big one in February. I think it was the second least snowy winter of, well, since maybe the 40s, something like that. So it was exceptionally dry, but we do, of course, get cold. Cold weather does hit us. We get temperatures that can definitely get to negatives. It can go below zero, especially at night sometimes, but usually those periods don't last very long either. Usually our winter, you can just assume it's going to be in the teens at night, and it's probably going to park it in the 20s somewhere during the day. That's what most of the winter truly is like, but we do get some days where it gets into the 30s. It can crack 40 even, 40 degrees. And sometimes we get a freak day where it might be in the 50s or even close to 60. We'll almost always every winter have a day or two like that where it just gets unseasonably warm. But most of the time it's going to be in the 20s. And now when we're here in very, very early March, February, I would say, is probably the month where I've just about had it with winter. And I do like a little bit of winter, I have to say that, because once we get into November, December, January, it feels like it slows things down quite a bit. And we're in the Eastern time zone, so we go off of daylight savings, so it does get dark a whole lot earlier. But given that we're in the Eastern time zone and the furthest west in that Eastern time zone, it doesn't get dark as early as it does in other parts of the country, and certainly further east, like in the Carolinas or in New York, because we're on the same time as them. So in the dead of winter here, it's dark 5:30ish. And if you're on the East Coast, it's probably more like 4:30 when it actually gets dark. So that's a good thing, bad thing, depending on who you are. I actually like it when it gets dark a little bit earlier. It's easier to unwind for the evening. It's easier to get the kids to bed, and you can kind of enjoy that slower time during the winter, and I really like it. But once February gets here, I'm kind of over it at that point. And February is cold, obviously. Like I said, it snowed really big, so we do get some snow in February. But by the time March comes, so days like today, even though it's actually pretty cold today and wet, it's not super comfortable actually standing out here filming this video. My hands are certainly pretty cold, but it gets to the point now where it's kind of hard to hold spring back. So we'll definitely get some rough days in March, no question about it. We can even get snow in March. We can get a little snow in April, but it absolutely doesn't last. It lasts maybe a matter of hours at that point, because the ground is starting to warm up. The air is starting, of course, to warm up. It doesn't stay cold as long. And you get into March, late winter, you might get some cold days in a row, but then you start to get a few warmer days sprinkled in there, and then fewer cold days in a row and some slightly warmer days sprinkled in there. So it really starts to lose its grip, and I'm pretty happy about that. But the winter here in the Midwest is a pretty typical Midwest winter, probably just with a little less snow than what you might think. But cold, wet, cloudy, absolutely. The winter is definitely all of those things for the most part during the months of December, January, and February. So if you live in a place that is pretty much warm year-round and you're thinking about moving to Indianapolis and you're worried about the winter, hopefully this will help. But if you have questions about the winter specifically and how it might affect you, then always make sure that you reach out. And until the next one, we'll see you later.